Hey, Kelly, you know we love when people leave reviews.
We sure do.
Here's one that came from Dr. Fred Moss' team. It says it's a standout podcast. The hosts are exceptional who skillfully extract valuable insights from their guests. The episodes are thought-provoking and transformative, making it a must-listen for personal growth. What? Thank you, Dr. Fred Moss' team. We really appreciate it.
Amazing. I like to think that we are checking all those boxes, though, for sure. That's great to hear.
Yeah. You know, it's our passion project. We love to do this and we love to help people. It means a lot when you tell us that it makes an impact. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
We had come back to the hotel and we were sitting there and I just started crying and I just told my husband, I can't do it anymore. I can't go back and do this anymore, which was really scary to say that out loud because I'd never said that out loud.
That's Kelli Field talking about hitting a wall in the most sudden way after decades of working in a high-earning, high-stress career that took a huge toll on her health. Something inside her finally said no.
And he said, quit your job and we'll figure it out. And I went back on Monday morning and I quit my job.
With no idea what to do next, Kelli followed a longtime goal to walk the Camino de Santiago, a grueling 800-kilometer pilgrimage across northern Spain. It was a walk that laid bare everything that needed to change.
It was challenging physically, emotionally, mentally. It really changed how I see everything. It boiled my life down to what I could carry on my back.
On this episode, Kelli takes us through the profound experience of the Camino and the extraordinary choice she and her husband made once she returned. It's the first of 2 episodes where we look at the stories of Camino walkers and how this epic pilgrimage changes lives. Welcome to The Breakout, a show about smashing through life's little boxes and forging your own path. I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich.
And I'm Kelly Gunther. Carrie and I are people and change experts and best friends. We've spent more than 25 years helping organizations navigate change and get the best out of their people.
Come on, we know change is hard, but staying the same can even be harder. On The Breakout, we prove that you can escape expectations, and best of all, we show you how.
Hi, Kelli Field. Thank you so much for being on our podcast. Let's start with, what did you break out of?
What I broke out of was expectations, pretty much all of them. Career expectations, familial expectations, expectations from friends and coworkers, people I'd known for years. People thought I was crazy. You know, I heard midlife crisis thrown around a lot and sort of this veiled, you'll regret this someday, right? You're at the height of your career. What do you think you're doing? And I heard a lot of, what do you think you're doing? And almost a sense of, I didn't have the right to go against the grain. Who do you think you are, in a sense? So yeah, that was what I broke out of for sure.
If you could give us a little bit of a picture of what your life was like before 2017.
I'd lived in Seattle for 20 years and worked in luxury fashion retail. I'd been the head of an innovation lab for a large luxury retailer. I'd moved the previous year to take a new job in Arizona, in Phoenix. And, my life had all the trappings of the American dream, right? Big house, lots of cars, expensive cars, long commute, expensive vacations, all of that. And I did everything I thought I was supposed to do to be happy, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? What's the next thing? You're always looking for what's that next thing? What's that next thing? And I was lucky, I had a really great career. It was very, very interesting. It wasn't that I didn't love what I did for a living and the people that I did it with. It was like a suit of clothing that no longer fit. And I couldn't continue to pretend that it didn't bind in certain places and it didn't chafe, and something had to give. So that was what my life looked like.
And so did it take a toll on you? In what ways did it affect you?
Absolutely, it took a toll on me. At one point, about 10 years before I finally said, I'm done, I had adrenal fatigue. I had operated at a level of just giving my career everything I had. And I think I grew up in a generation where that was the expectation, certainly. If you wanted to succeed, that was sort of the first canary in the coal mine that maybe this wasn't going to be the long-term plan. But I was like, you got to get back up on that horse, get back up on that horse. And you're supposed to want all of these things. You're supposed to want to do these things. And it took about another 10 years for me to realize that I didn't want all those things.
If we then look ahead to you're working in this very intense, very focused kind of lifestyle where you said, I've basically checked every box if you want the American dream, right? I've got it all. And I should be happy, but I'm not. So something shifted. What was that kind of moment of realization for you?
Oh, gosh. We were in Europe on New Year's Eve of 2016. And we had visited some friends in Paris, and we had come back to the hotel, and we were sitting there, and I just started crying. And I just told my husband, I can't do it anymore. I can't go back and do this anymore, which was really scary to say that out loud because I'd never said that out loud. I'd always been like, you got to get it together. You got to keep going. You got to find a way through this. You're so lucky, right? There's that whole conversation we have with ourselves of you got to be grateful. You always got to have gratitude, which I do believe you should do, but gratitude isn't a set of blinders, right? So I said that to him, and he said, quit your job and we'll figure it out. And I went back on Monday morning and I quit my job. So that was a Friday night. Went back on Monday morning, quit my job.
Wow.
Is that crazy?
I mean, I have goosebumps when as you say that. What did that feel like? Your husband says, quit your job. What feelings came up for you as he said that to you?
At first I said, I can't do that. I mean, I can't do that. I can't just quit my job. Like, we have a life, And he said, quit your job. We'll figure it out. And I swear to you, there was this moment of clarity. All of my fear about that I think about it now and I think, oh, Kelly, you should have been really afraid. But I wasn't afraid. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do that. On Monday morning, I went in and quit my job. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, it wasn't like I had a plan. I didn't think, oh, someday I'm going to walk the Camino de Santiago, right? I mean, I literally was like, I had no idea what I was going to do on Tuesday. I just knew that I couldn't do this anymore. And so it was a moment of clarity. And I know my whole team took me out to a meal and we sat down and I couldn't stop smiling, and I looked at them and I thought they looked so sad, and I loved them. Absolutely. I loved working with them. But I thought, I'm on the other side of this now. There was a weird break in my ability to relate to them and their ability to relate to me. And in that moment.
I had to miss this interview, so it was just the two Kellys chatting. But I loved listening to it later, and as usual, Gunther and I had to break it all down afterward. When you said, what did you break out of? She's like, everything, like all the expectations. And I just thought, well, that's a baller move right there. I'm just going to break out of all of them.
I think having gone through the health crisis that she did, no job, no career, nothing is worth losing your health or life over. She even talked about it feeling like a suit of armor that didn't fit her anymore. Mm-hmm. And when you get to that point, there's no amount of trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Everyone kind of hits that wall at different times. Like you may think it's the first health scare and that's the wall, but sometimes it's this accumulation and then it is one kind of thing that the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. And you realize how much you dislike going somewhere Monday morning. And it's not just, it's a bad month or it's a bad week. It's, no, I really dislike it and I want my entire life to change. And I think just people come to that at different times. And what I loved about that story is not only did she articulate it, but she had a really supportive family on it. Trust me, there's a lot of other spouses who'd be like, don't care. You make ton of money. Our family is X, Y, and Z. And that's what Kelli and I have heard so much when we do some assessments and we can tell, I'm like, it doesn't seem like this job matches what we like to do. And they're like, yeah, but I have 3 kids in college, so that's what's going to happen. But it breaks at some point.
So as you mentioned, you didn't know that you were going to walk the Camino. So tell us a bit about what the Camino de Santiago is.
There's a city in northwest Spain called Santiago de Compostela. And it's been a focal point for pilgrimage in Europe for more than 1,000 years. So there are untold numbers of pilgrimage routes that pilgrims walked, took donkeys, rode horses, 1,000 years ago, all the way up until present day, from their homes all over Europe to Santiago de Compostela as a mechanism for self-reflection, really. This year, they had record numbers, 450,000 people walked a Camino, either from Portugal through Spain, took a boat, a whole host of ways to get there. And really, it's about spending that time. For me, it was 36 days of walking from France to Santiago, all the way across northern Spain. It's a time to sort of take a step back and strip yourself down to kind of the essence of who you really are. The masks all fall away, and you take a beat to reassess your life. And there's a lot of people in the world that are deciding to take that journey.
Absolutely incredible. 450,000 people did it last year. Many do it alone. You happen to do it with your daughter, is my understanding.
Yeah, the first time I did it with my daughter. The second time I did it with my husband, and then this last time I did it in the winter alone.
What was the experience in all 3 situations?
The first time with my daughter was very challenging, for sure. She was in high school, and I had just quit my job. My husband said, you should go take that walk in Spain you talked about a long time ago. And I said, yeah, I should do that, because I had no idea what I was doing. But I really had no idea what was entailed in doing it. And my daughter said, I'll go with you, which I was incredibly grateful for, because I was really nervous about going and doing it. And it was, challenging physically, emotionally, mentally. It really changed how I see everything. It boiled my life down to what I could carry on my back. I literally needed nothing other than what was on my back. And I know that when I started out, I had so much more gear. And you cross the Pyrenees, it's the toughest stretch, really, truly, I think, because you're not in good enough shape. You'll never be in good enough shape to walk over the Pyrenees. Weather's bad, whole host of other things. And you get to this monastery in Spain after, you start in France and you get to this monastery in Spain, and there's a table and it's piled high with gear, because everyone says this, and you don't know it until that first walk over the Pyrenees. You pack your fears. And so you start out, you see these people in France, and I was one of those people, had an enormous backpack filled with everything that could possibly ever happen to me. I had in that backpack. And when you cross over a mountain range, you realize that you didn't need 60% of what is in that bag. And it all goes on that table. So that was the experience. And that, that first week, I always said that first week is the trail of tears, because you're shouting at the sky saying, why am I here doing this? Why, this is crazy. I'm tired. I hurt. I can barely get out of bed, off my bunk in the morning, in the dark with a headlamp on. And I don't even know why I'm doing this. And then like days 7, 8, you don't hurt so much anymore. And you've discarded all the things out of your pack that you don't need. And now you can start that sort of self-transformation. But you have to go through that trail of tears first.
It has to be incredibly powerful, and just the emotions that you see and go through, and that you see others go through too.
Yes, it is interesting, because, that first day, There's a place called Orison or Borda, and you only walk 8 kilometers. And when I say only, it's like straight up, up a mountainside.
Okay.
And so you can split that first day. You don't have to go all the way to Roncesvalles in Spain that first day. You can stop. And so we decided to stop. And they have this big communal dinner. And everybody goes around and says their name and where they're from and why they think they're there. But that will all change on the way to Santiago. You think you know why you're there. And slowly but surely, you see people and you see them break down and you help them. It's funny because on the Camino, like someone will get hurt and they'll say, well, I have to stop. And you say goodbye to them. And they say, well, I won't see you again because you're going to continue on. But then oddly, weirdly, Camino time, you get hurt and you have to stop and they catch up to you. So you have this sort of push me, pull me situation. And it was so interesting to see people's faces that I saw that first day and to see them walk into Santiago and no one looked the same. And I just love that.
We'll get back to the interview after this quick break.
The Breakout comes to you from Abrachi Group. We offer coaching and consulting to help you dig into change. Here's what we know. Only about 10% of us are really self-aware. Without self-awareness, improvement is tough because if you don't know what box you're in, you can't break out of it. That's where we come in.
We've got a soft spot for people itching to forge a fresh path, the high flyers who need to be nudged out of career ruts, teams who are looking to become more aligned, and yes, even those bold souls who've occasionally worn the jerk badge. Connect with us at abrachigroup.com.
So when you completed the Camino, you made such a huge decision to completely really change your life. So tell us about what that next step looked like.
Well, I went home and I told my husband we should move to Spain. And he was so shocked at the transformation in me and pleased. He said, absolutely. Okay. And it was like, okay, now we just have to figure out how we're going to do it. And where are we going in Spain, right? I mean, you can't live on the Camino, so where are we going in Spain? And so we took about 6 months. In that 6 months, we sold everything, literally everything. Cars, house was gone, everything in the house was gone. And we landed in Valencia with 4 suitcases 6 months later on a rainy March 1st night and had no idea what we were doing. But we figured we'd figure it out. We'd always figured it out before. We would figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it happened.
And was that where you started hearing what were you thinking, what are you doing from people around you when you started to share, we're moving to Spain and we're selling everything?
Yeah, I would say the majority of people thought we were crazy. And I think a lot of people thought they'll go for a year and they'll come back. There was a lot of, I would say, skepticism for sure. I think fear, when are we going to see you again? I'd say, you're welcome to come and visit. Oh, I can't get the time off. There's always this sort of like, it was just an odd feeling. So that when we did leave, I would say we felt more alone than we had 6 months before. We very much felt alone. Like it was my husband and I. This is it. Like we're going. And you have to be willing to do that. I look back and I think, if we knew then what we know now, how hard things were going to be, maybe we wouldn't have done it because we had to sort of bite off each one of those things individually and deal with them individually. And then slowly but surely you get better. That sense of getting really comfortable with discomfort. And my husband said this, he said, when we leave this apartment, because we'd rented an apartment in Valencia, when we leave this apartment, everything is uncomfortable. From standing with someone in the elevator and walking out the front door and going to a cafe and ordering something. He had never been to Spain. So when we moved here, so then that's the kind of adventurer he is. So that getting comfortable with discomfort was, it took us a year to do that. And then we realized we could do anything after that.
Mm-hmm. I just so love the support system that you have in him because I could see somebody who's like, what? You want to move to Spain? Are you kidding me? Because that in and of itself, I think, can be really difficult. And what I love is that, number one, there is that acceptance of, I want you to find something that makes you fulfilled and that gives you that sense of joy, and that he's so ready and willing and able to take the leap with you.
Well, it's interesting because, I kind of gloss over the getting rid of everything. We had a sale, we had an estate sale, and people came and looked through our stuff, and he watched them. My husband was a big whitewater kayaker, whitewater raft guide in Seattle and the Cascades. And when they took his boats away, when we closed the garage that day, he just turned around to me and he said, I'm going to need some time by myself. I mean, he's an amazing person and a great support, but it cost him at times. And that was hard to watch.
Yeah. I mean, the courage that both of you demonstrate, in doing something different and doing it because you love each other and you want what's best for each other too, and I think that's what's so incredibly powerful about your story. What is it about the Camino that you think causes such big shifts in people?
There is the struggle side of it. There's a lot of Spaniards who walk, but the folks that walk it from, English-speaking countries, I think it's because it goes back to that discomfort, getting comfortable with discomfort. You're walking in a country, you can barely communicate with the people that are around you. You need to get food, literally stripped down to the basics. And you have to rely on other people. I feel like in the U.S., we're such an individualistic society. And I know for myself, I so often wouldn't ask for the help that I needed when I needed it. Even if I knew someone could give it to me, there's a pride. There's something like you just have to, you got to strive, you've got to do it, and you got to look good doing it, right? Don't let them see you sweat because you want that next gig, right? My last Camino, I was sitting on a rock and I'd run out of water and I was in bad shape. I should have stopped sooner. I should have asked someone sooner. I should have, all those should haves, right? You learn those lessons. And some women stopped and they said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm not okay." And they're like, they got out, they got the pack out and they got water and they got hydration salts and they gave me all this stuff and they helped me. And it was a reminder of community and that sense on the Camino of community. And they talk about having a Camino family, and it often forms early when people they're learning how to do this thing. People say, "Oh, it's just a big long walk." I'm like, it's not just a big long walk. You're not only learning how to walk, physically how to walk with poles or how to carry a pack or how to, walk down a mountainside without, destroying your knees, but also how to be a member of a community that can help each other. And I think there's beauty in that. My last time I walked, I met this Canadian couple, maybe 400 miles ago. And I walked slow. I walked a really slow Camino. It took me more than 40 days. And they got to Santiago before I did. And I thought, okay, my whole Camino family, they're all gone. I'm the last one to come in. And when I walked in that square, they were standing there. They waited for me. And that's that sense of, there's something about meeting these people and creating that community that changes you forever, I think.
Mm-hmm. The change that you made was so drastic. Do you think that you would have been able to have changed your lifestyle and lived perhaps more simply if you hadn't moved to Spain?
Oh gosh, would I have been able to do it? No, I don't think so. I think I would have been sucked back in because it's sort of like muscle memory. It's like muscle memory and a pebble in your shoe. You walk with it and it hurts, but you're used to that and you know what that feels like. And sometimes when you take the pebble out of your shoe, that hurts too. Maybe hurts even more. Mm-hmm. And so it would have been easier to walk with the pebble in my shoe if I stayed in the US. Mm-hmm. And I needed to jump off the cliff knowing that there might not be a net at the bottom.
What was really interesting to me is when Kelli talked about the community table and people overpack for their first walk. They think they need so much. And then at that community table, all these bags are left and they realize they don't need that much. And I thought, well, what a perfect example and analogy for life. Do we really need all this stuff that you think you need? Probably not.
It really kind of allows you to strip yourself of everything to just the most bare components of who you are. And so literally stripping yourself of the physical baggage that you bring with you, but then also stripping yourself of maybe the emotional baggage and the psychological baggage that you have with you, so that when you finish, you are left with just the core essentials of who you are. And from there, you can determine what you want the next version of your life to look like.
I remember one time talking to my buddy, he was a psychologist. It wasn't a therapy session. He just happened to be a psychologist. And I said something about being angry about something. And he's like, well, what happens if you left that anger? I'm like, but that's who I am. You know what I mean? Like, I'm angry about this. So like, what would happen? What would I be like if I could let that go and being angry about it? And then like kind of defines me. I'm like, what if I don't have my humor anymore? Like, it's kind of scary because you think, this does define me. So if I change it and I lose it, who am I then? So it's like big. No wonder. I'm glad they have a really long walk to think through it, because these are big questions. It's not just a 1 mile walk.
I know you mentioned that it took probably a good year to feel a part of the Spanish culture. So what's it like living in Spain now? What's your life like?
Oh gosh, I'd say we're still comfortable with discomfort because we have to be. We lived for 3 years in Valencia, and then we moved up here to Galicia. We have a lavender farm, and we have such a sense of community here. I've really craved community, and I have that here. Our neighbors, who mostly speak Gallego, they don't really speak English. They come and bring us vegetables. They help us with our dog. They help me hoe my garden. It's just it's a slower life, but it's a beautiful life. And it's the pace of life that I'm interested in living.
And that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. I have a chicken coop. I paint. I write. I grow lavender, and I have a food truck where I serve pilgrims when they walk by. And I have a lot of little irons in the fire, and I love it.
You wrote an incredibly powerful book about your experience too. Share with us a little bit about your book.
It's called The Grief of Goodbye. It's a fiction book, actually, but it is about mother and daughter walking the Camino. I did walk the Camino with my daughter, so I have quite a lot of experience at that. But yes, it's about Tess Sullivan. She's kind of a high-powered exec, and she gets a cancer diagnosis, a fatal cancer diagnosis, and at the same time discovers that her daughter is kind of spiraling into drugs and alcohol. And so she decides to take her daughter away to Spain and to walk the Camino de Santiago and see if they can find a way to kind of heal on their way to Santiago. Yeah, it's a 3-book trilogy. I'm writing the second one now. There's an ongoing story.
Wow.
Yeah, it's exciting. And the response from pilgrims for the book, they've just really embraced it. It's been fantastic.
Love it. I'm so glad that you busted out of expectations and didn't listen to people around you who were more than willing to say, what are you thinking? Who are you? What do you think you're doing? Because it can be really easy to get sucked back into that vortex of, I'm just going to follow what the mainstream is doing and not listen to that inner voice. Yes, you've been surrounded by a lot of things that are lovely and great, but don't necessarily have what you have right now, which is what makes you truly happy.
Yeah, I have contentment. It's funny because I used to think, I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. And I would say now I would wish just for contentment. It's a calm place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. So you still go on pilgrimages. You have lots of contact with people who are on the Camino. You have your food truck, which I think is super cool. What does it mean to be a pilgrim to you now?
I think a pilgrim is a seeker of self. I think we're all on pilgrimage all the time. I don't think you have to come to Spain and check out of your life to do the work of that. I think in some ways it's like taking 36 days to do it is like frozen concentrated orange juice, I got it all in one shot. But I think that it's possible to do it in your everyday life. And I try to remember what that feels like. It's certainly easier for me because, I talk to pilgrims every day and I see that look, that look that they have, of that look of transformation. And I say this all the time. We live on a river of positivity at my gate. I have 3,000 pilgrims a day that walk by, and I'll be trimming the hedge and I'll hear an American or Canadian or whatever English speaking voice. And I'll always ask them where they're from, and we have a nice conversation. And I feel like I get to plug into their transformation. And that is kind of a little jolt for me to remind me to kind of keep that spirit alive. I get to see people, I get to recognize what that looks like. And I never, ever take it for granted. People come and talk to us and tell us their story. And I'm so grateful for that. I feel like that somehow we're here to listen, because there's so many people who need someone to hear their story. I mean, you know that.
Well, and I'm grateful that we got to hear your story, Kelli. It's a powerful one at that. Last question for you. It's one of my favorite questions is, you have 1 minute with someone who is stuck and they want to break out. What do you tell them?
Oh, don't look away. Listen. Trust yourself. Like I said before, get comfortable with discomfort. That's going to be your best friend. And be okay with not knowing. And I would also say, I live by this. Lean into being really bad at what that next thing is before you can get good at it. And just own that. You're just the worst, whatever. We were the worst at living in Spain until we got really good at it. So if you can get comfortable with all those things, or at least reconcile yourself to it, it's all going to be okay.
Oh, I love your vulnerability and your positivity. And I think the word for me that I see in you is contentment, to your point, Kelli, that you've gone through this really transformational journey and done incredibly hard things. But, the faith that it took for you to make this decision and the courage it took to even say the words, I want to quit my job, that can be just the hardest thing when you don't have something in store as a next step. And you're living proof of what it looks like on the other side. Thank you so much, Kelli, for sharing your incredibly powerful story with us.
Thank you so much. It was a good conversation.
That was the courageous Kelli Field, busting out of all the expectations. Be sure to check out our next episode, where we speak to another Camino walker about her life-altering journey. This is The Breakout from Abrachi Group.
At Abrachi Group, we specialize in coaching and consulting for brave new directions. Connect with us at abrachigroup.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to The Breakout so you never miss a new episode. And make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Breakout Pod. I'm Kelli Gunther.
And I'm Dr. Carrie Ulrich. See you next time.